Okay, hey guys, this is for the woodworking class. I came across these cushions, and my father-in-law is not a slender man. He's a great guy though. And we thought, hey, let's make him a chair that his father used to have. And it was a very wide chair, no offense, but it was very wide and very strong. And I thought, I've got a bunch of 2x4s down here. So I started sketching something out. Sketched out what the chair might look like, just real rough. What I'm going to take advantage of is lap joints. You'll see right here how the 2x4s are going to go across, and I'll take you along for the ride as I make all these joints. But what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of just feeling around and kind of squatting in the dirt over here, trying to measure my butt to the ground. How high would a chair have to be? Kind of making it from scratch, going off of other chairs I've got inside. And I made a list, made a cut list, if that looks familiar to you. So it looks like I'll need 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 different pieces of 2x4 varying lengths attached in a lap joint type of fashion. We'll talk about that. And I'm going to make my lap joints with a miter saw, setting the stop at the right height, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, this is the first in a series of short videos on how to make this for Papa. Now, as you can see, I'm labeling each piece. 2 back posts and 2 front legs so far, so that the pieces don't get confusing. And as I go through on my little rough thing here, I check it off. Or maybe even I'll just put a line through it so I've got those cut. All right, keeping track of what I have in a very methodical way, even for a very simple project like this. Alrighty, I've got all my pieces pre-cut. They're just cut to length, 2x4s. But now I have to take a look at this little crappy diagram and kind of go from here and say, okay, well, how do I want to do this? This little section right here represents the seat sides, okay? And there's 2 of those. The seat sides are going to connect with the front leg and the back post in a lap joint. So what I have to do is I have to cut my lap joint, my half lap, on these pieces. But then these front pieces will have a lap joint in the middle of the piece of wood, which will be a big wide dado. So it's going to get kind of confusing. So what I had to do is take my crappy little list of things and expand it a little bit more to include a mark where I can say, okay, did I mark the spot on the seat sides where the joint's going to go? And this is what I've done. So I go ahead and at this stage, I am marking where I'm going to place or where I'm going to cut my lap joint to. You see, a lap joint is when you take 2 pieces of wood and you join it like this. But I take half of the thickness off of this piece of wood and half the thickness off of this piece of wood, so that when I flip this over and connect them, this surface and this surface are the same, they're flush. It does 2 things, gives you a couple more angles, like this notch right in here is another glued surface. It gives you a flush surface, which is a nicer finish. And it stops it from wobbling, because once it's glued and screwed in place, this notch right here that the wood drops down into is braced up against this ledge. And it's kind of handy, but it's extremely strong. And seeing as how he's a very big man, we need to make sure he's nice and safe. Okay, on to marking all the pieces. Now, I've decided to add another column where it says joint type. Pardon my spelling, or not my spelling, but my penmanship. It's pretty bad. The different types of joints. I'm going to have a lap joint that is across the width, okay? But I'm also going to have another type of lap joint that goes across the length, so that the pieces will drop into a slot like this for making up the seat. So I'm going to call these 2 different types of joints lap joint W for width and lap joint T for lap joint thickness, okay? And I'll show you what that looks like. But I've indicated what type of joint each gets. So my chart is starting to expand. I now can track whether or not I've marked them correctly, and I can detail what type of joint I have marked. And then as I cut them, I tick them off. And then we'll go to the assembly stage, which is another chart altogether. Alrighty, moving along. As you can see, I had to put the front legs 2 at 30 down here. It used to be up there and it was in the wrong slot. So I was just making this chart up as I go, which is definitely a benefit to having a pre-made chart with open spaces. You can fill it in. Makes things much smoother, but a dry erase board is pretty handy to have in a shop. Anyway, now it's on to marking the most difficult piece. Well, not really. The 48-inch high back piece. And that's it. And then I'll get to cutting. So in order to make these notches, what I do is I separate this into, well, here's what it's going to be. Here's the rear of the seat, and this is the front of the seat, okay? So what's going to happen is I'm going to have pieces of wood that will drop in here, much like the other lap joint, but it's going to drop down so that the top is flush. So I'm taking half of the width of this, making a notch out. And what it looks like when it's all said and done is this. I cut that out. Where the X is, that's the center of where the mark is. I cut that out, that notch out, and that notch out. And the other piece that intersects it has the end notch of the same size cut out, so I can drop it straight down into it. So how I did that was I took the full 24 inches long. I divided it into 3, so 24 divided by 3 is 8. So I went 8-inch center, 8-inch center, and then I measured to the left and right half of the width, or half of the thickness of a 2x4. So 2x4 is 1.5 inches, so I went to the left 3/4 of an inch and to the right 3/4 of an inch. Then I drew lines with my square, and then I measured down half of the width of a 2x4, which is 3.5, and half of that is 1 3/4. So that's how I found out what that is. A little bit of math. Okay, so here is the beginning stages of that half lap cut. What I've done is I've put a stop block on the miter saw, right? A little stop block right there does not let it go down any further, right? So I put the piece in place, I can roll it over. I've got that clamped in place, and I'll just cut a bunch of spots like this. And then I'll just come in with a chisel and knock that out and just clean that up, and then overlap them. It'll take a little bit of elbow grease, but not bad. And now I'm off to the bandsaw to cut these bigger notches out. You've seen that work, so I'll be back when it's done. Once again, thank you, Mr. Tenner, for letting us use your bandsaw. My father-in-law says thank you. Here we go. Okay, so it starts like this, right? I take my little chisel, and I just go tap, 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 and I notch these things out. And once I notch them out, I start scraping and scraping and scraping. And then I finish up with this block plane, like so. And I just go across this way, and it cleans it up just fine. So what I'm after is not really 100% surface glue, but I'm going to screw this together, and the notched wood will go together like so. I may have to clean it up a bit more, but maybe that's just a nice tight fit. It's going to be great. So I'll cut this piece out here with the chisel, and I'll show you how rough it is, and we'll take it to the next step together. So I've notched out 1/2, and the pieces just fall out like that. Let's do the other half. Okay, so I've got some of the pieces out, and you can see, let's get a nice view. You can see it's still a bit rough, but this is when you take the chisel and you do it across this way. Okay, see, I don't have this fastened down, but I'm about to, so I can really attack this. And you just scratch across. Now, all those scoring marks that I made, all those slots and grooves I made with the saw, have given me a common elevation here. So when I scrape it down, once I scrape it down to the point where all these raised leftover pieces are flush with the bottom of the blade marks, then I'll know I've got a flat piece across the bottom. And that's how you can use that as a guide when you're doing things with hand tools. So now you can see that I got most of it down, and then I come in, and that's, you have to remember that that is only with a sharp chisel. So I've sharpened that chisel, thanks to my next door neighbor Nick. So I come in here with the block plane next, and I just take up the rest of the uneven surface to smooth it out just a little bit more. And it's just pulling out little shavings. Beautiful. And that's as much as I need. Perfect. Okay, so we've made a little bit of progress here. I cut all the extra pieces. I used the bandsaw to cut out the notches, and now I'm just assembling them. These are the inner pieces to give a more additional support. I hope this works out well. Yes, those are okay. Yes, that's how that's going to go. Whew, scared me. All right, so you can see when you get a bunch of pieces up on a table, it's easy to get confused and say, oh, which one was that again? So it's very important to stay organized in your process here. So you've got all my pieces cut. and I put that up there for reference. But then all the pieces came down below here. Now I'm doing all this in one shot. Okay, so it means it's staying fresh in my head. I don't actually walk away. If I were to walk away, put it away for the day, come back and pick up again tomorrow, then what would happen is I would forget, and I would have to take accurate notes and good notes so that I would know what the heck I was doing on the previous day. So right now, it's not that difficult for me to do this project. I'll be done within probably another half an hour, and I'll show you the finished project. Well, before the sanding and finishing, that is. Okay, with some last minute fine tuning, I had to notch out this a little bit differently. I put the last seat support in place. Let's see if I can get this just right. Put that right there and right there. So there's an awful lot of structural support. These are just butt jointed on the end, the front and backs. They're just butt jointed, but they're supported by a 45-degree bracket or bracing on the bottom. So that's on all four sides. And I'm thinking I should tighten up that one just a bit more, but let me put that one in there. That's a little better. Anyway, you've been gone for a ride here. And it's starting to shape up. So now we just got to put the back slats on and then the arms. Join you in a minute. Hello again. Well, here's the chair. All completed, sanded down, and I put a coat, well, my son and I put a coat of not Varathane, I keep making the wrong statement. We put a coat of deck stain on there. So that's what she looks like for now. My daughter had the idea of trimming the top with a piece of 2x6. I just cut it on the bandsaw and sanded it down and smoothed it out. Hey, say hi, Teddy. Anyway, next is going to be the cedar seat slats. Well, here's the seat slats. I just cut pieces of cedar so I could put it in there without having to struggle with putting a piece of plywood in there. Anyway, I think it looks very fine. Next, cushions. And here we have the finished chair. Cushions and all. Not bad. I think in total, 4 hours worth of work. Of course, I had help from my youngest son, Nate. It was a lot of fun. This is a Father's Day gift for my father-in-law. And it's going to be awesome.